white men are the biggest terrorist threat in the United States. He based this on an Anti-Defamation League study that showed that 71% of all deaths in the country were committed by right-wing extremists. Presumably these were domestic terrorists, which is how they are presented by Don Lemon. The problem is, and what Don Lemon doesn't tell you, is that in this study, they counted prison deaths and gang violence. So within that number, the vast majority of those are prison related. They call that domestic terrorism, but yet this is really just gang violence. This is, I mean, you could call it racist, but all the gangs in prison are racist. They continued to defend their claims on CNN today, with one of the panelists, Kirsten Powers, claiming again that white men are the real threat and that something needs to be done, apparently, about white men. At one point, Lemon says, they say of the extremist-related murders in the U.S., 71% came from right-wing extremism, 26% from Islamic extremism, and 3% from left-wing extremism. That's 387 total deaths from 2008 to 2017.
So, Congressman, the Times is reporting, they referenced these stats, all right, from the Anti-Defamation League. They say of the extremist-related murders in the U.S., 71% came from right-wing extremism, 26% Islamic extremism, 3% from left-wing extremism. That's 387 total deaths from 2008 to 2017. Shouldn't law enforcement be concerned about it? Shouldn't we be concerned about it? Should we be able to talk about it without getting demonized? Quite honestly, I did. And it was accurate. What I said was right. What's the way? What do we do?
Well, the problem here is that you have, I mean, let's just, if all these school shootings were done by someone from the Middle East, there'd be a very different reaction to them. I think if they were frankly done by African Americans, there'd be a very different reaction to them. And so what we see here is that we ignore, and we have statistics here showing that white men are very violent and a problem, and nothing's being done about it. And then we have the President of the United States talking about a bunch of brown people like they're the terrorists. I mean, we have a country where every other day it seems like a white woman calls the police on a black man for barbecuing or gardening or delivering the mail, and yet we sit quietly while all these white men are out, terrorizing people, essentially. I mean, every time there's one of these shootings and it's a white man.
Yeah. I'll tell you. I know we have to get to the break, but one of the most frustrating things for me is the default is to say, when you talk about this, well, what about black-on-black crime? And if that's the first place your mind goes, you need to check yourself.
Absolutely.
Because what about people with red hair? Like, that is not what we're talking about. There is an issue with crime. We talk about black. We talk about that all the time.
But let me just debunk this, because we're in front of a worldwide audience, and let me just say that black-on-black crime is a myth. We live in highly segregated societies.
You're making my point for me. That's what I wanted to say.
People perpetrate crimes against their same community because we live in segregated communities. And so the highest instances of crime against white people is perpetrated by white people.
The highest instances of crime perpetrated by black people. We're going to continue that in the next block. But I'm saying the fact that your mind goes there says a lot about what you're trying to make an excuse for, and why is it so uncomfortable for people to admit there's a certain segment of terrorism, of crime in this country that white males are mostly responsible for. What is so hard to discuss about that? That's what I don't understand. And why is it so easy for us to talk about? No one complains when we talk about black-on-black crime. Right. It's as if it's supposed to be talked about, and that's just how the world is. We're going to continue this on the other side of the break.
The other CNN contributor, Charlie Dent, added, shouldn't law enforcement be concerned about it? Shouldn't we be concerned about it? Shouldn't we be able to talk about it without being demonized? Quite honestly, I did, but it was accurate. What I said was right. What's the way? What do we do? Okay, it's not right. What he said was not accurate. The problem, again, with this study is that they're not telling you how they formulated that data. Again, that a lot of that data was taken from prison. But also, they only counted deaths. So they say only 26% of terrorism was Islamic extremism between 2008 and 2017. What they're not telling you is that there were something like 197 terrorist attacks that were thwarted within that same period. Or there were attacks that didn't kill people but wounded people, injured them. I'm from Columbus, Ohio. In my small town of Columbus, we had 2 Islamic terrorist attacks, both of which just resulted in injured people and the attackers themselves being killed. But that doesn't get counted in this study. Another thing they don't give you is a little context. White men make up about 37% of this country. Muslims make up about 2% of the country. So if you look at a per capita breakdown, what you're going to find is that white people and white men consist of a very low percentage of both murder, violent crime, and hate crimes. Another stat is that black men, who make up about 6% of the country, are responsible for over half of all violent crime in this country. And that violent crime, 97% of the time, is targeted at other black people. Whereas white crime is generally against other white people, but that's only 87% of the time. Meaning that actually it would seem that black people are a bigger threat to white people than the other way around. Now, I'm not saying this to demonize anybody, to demonize black people or any group of people. I'm simply adding context to the racial fear-mongering coming from CNN. They even go as far to say on CNN that black-on-black crime is a myth. But those stats I just gave you tell a different story. That's the reality. But when you go to CNN, you're going to get an alternate reality. And that alternate reality, its only purpose is to advance the Democrat Party and their agenda. So just make sure that you all get out tomorrow and vote. The only way we're going to change any of this is to continue to vote and continue to help the Republicans and Trump push through a pro-American agenda that in the end is going to be good for everybody. It won't matter what skin color you are. It's going to be good for every American. Hey, thanks as usual. Like, share, and subscribe. I do have a PayPal tip jar if you want to throw me a tip and if you'd like to subscribe.